Hey BookTube, I thought I would do the book reviewer tag. This was created by Gemma at Read a Book Gem. This is her first year anniversary on BookTube, and so she created this tag, which is a really awesome tag. Definitely gets my juices going as someone who loves to talk about books and considers myself sort of a person who talks about books. Does that make me a book reviewer? Probably not. But let's go in. Let's go into these questions about all about book reviews and how we interact with other reviews. So for number one, in the kind of section of making reviews, where do you post your book reviews outside of BookTube? Not so much anywhere anymore. Previous to BookTube, I did post little potted reviews on Goodreads, but I sort of found that kind of I did not find much of a community on Goodreads. I found it fairly, we're all in little separate little bubbles. It didn't really get any. I didn't really make any friends on there. Not that I'm particularly great at making friends, anyways. So it's maybe more of a criticism of me than it is of it. But what I found was once I started getting on BookTube and making reviews here, whatever urge I had on Goodreads, now Goodreads is basically just a catalog system of, these are books I read from this point to this point, and that kind of thing. Number two, what is your star rating system? So my star rating on BookTube itself is I don't have one. I don't like giving ratings on books. I like talking about books and examining them, and I think hopefully if I've communicated anything after I've read a book, you'll know if like I'm super hyped about it, or I'm like, there's some good parts, there's some bad parts, or I hated it with a fiery passion. And book and star system, I find the star systems are strangely so subjective that one person's 5-star book is another person's 3-star book. And oftentimes that would be 3 stars. I read, like on Goodreads, I read a lot of people's 5-star reviews and like, yep, that's a 3-star book. that was an okay, competent book, and they've given it 5 stars because they're thrilled. But so I find that the best way for me to communicate that is just to have really long videos about individual books, and that tells you everything, and probably isn't great for people who just want a quick thing. Convince me to read a favorite book of yours in no more than 5 words. Read the book, I like it. Read the book, I like it. No, I failed. Okay. Number 4. Which book was the hardest to review and why? Currently, I'd say the hardest book for me to review, because I haven't managed to review it yet in a full way, is The Mirror and the Light. And that's the nature of how I read it. I read it during the COVID-19. There were many pauses. I've now let too much time elapse since I finished it to have that immediate visceral reaction. This is the hardest book to review. And why? That's why. Not that I've actually gotten a review out of it, and maybe I never will, which would make it very difficult. Number 5. Are there any books you won't review or give a star rating to out of principle? That might come back to kind of books that I've put down and I just haven't come to conclusion. And after a certain point, you go, well, if I haven't come to conclusion, I can't actually give it a rating. I mean, I know this is a really good book, but there's also parts of this book that I think are maybe it feels like it's an overlong book, or it's a book where the author has gotten overwhelmed by history. This is the third and concluding book in Hilary Mantel's Thomas Cromwell series, and I feel like the book got trapped in its own kind of research and history there at the end, a little too much of a grind. Whereas before I hadn't found that. But that's, and I can't even say that definitively. So, number 6, a book you really want to read has terrible reviews. Do you still read it? Maybe my enthusiasm, like how quick I'm going to pick it up, is diminished. It depends. It depends. Sometimes a book gets a lot of negative reviews, so many negative reviews you want to go look. And then that makes it more of a thing. That makes it like, oh, I would have never even paid attention to this book if people hadn't got so upset about it. So, it's one of these, no publicity is bad publicity, even if it's horrible. Like, this book is terrible, it's awful. It's like, well, I should take a look at it and see why it's so terrible and awful, why all these people think that. Oftentimes you start studying, it becomes a book that's more interesting because of the reviews than it is the book itself. Where do you view book reviews outside of BookTube? And what is your favorite preferred format? Short, long, video, print, stuff like that. Outside of BookTube, probably written book reviews on the New York Times, various kind of websites, The Guardian, things like that. That is actually diminished again with BookTube, but I still dip into those, and there's some reviewers that like, oh, I know that reviewer, so I will kind of take a look and see what they have to say. Number 8, at what point do you view reviews of a book that you're reading? Before, during, or after? So for before, I do it well before. So I'm sort of scoping the landscape out, because it takes me so long to get to a book that I'll read reviews of a book and go, oh, that sounds interesting, toss it on my pile, so that by the time I actually get to the book, I only have a vague memory of what reviewers might have said, but at least I have a general idea, like, okay, this sounds like it's at least a competently well-written book that might have some interesting stuff, and that by the time I get to it, I don't remember any of that, just that, oh, I picked that out for myself. Past self picked that out for me. For during, that would be when it's a book is like really confusing me or really frustrating me, or I'm considering just putting it down, and one of my last Hail Marys might be, okay, I'm going to go look at reviews of this book and see what they saw in it and maybe what I'm missing or stuff like that. And then oftentimes I was like so-so on the book, so I'll look at the so-so reviews, and then I'll look at the higher reviews, and I'll look at the lower reviews, just to kind of get a general feel. I always do that after I've actually made my review. If I make a review, reaction video, whatever, on this channel, I always make a point of looking at those reviews afterwards, just because I don't want that to influence my reaction to the book. I know Steve said, like, I have my own thoughts, and there's nothing would shake me from them and stuff like that. It's like I would get influenced. I would get influenced if Steve said, "Oh, this is a great book for this reason," and it may be stuff that then I would start feel like, oh, I'm just repeating what Steve said. To take an example, or I would, I'm thinking of that because he just did a video on Venus and Adonis, and I made sure I did my video on Venus and Adonis. ShakeTube! I did my video before I went and looked at his, just because I didn't want to get influenced by him. I'm a weak-minded soul that way. So yes, and yeah, it's like, oh, I hated this book, so you look at the negative reviews. Oftentimes I have to say, especially like something like Goodreads, where I'm looking at kind of the general overall scope of things. I'll sort of like, oh, okay, these are the positive reviews, these are the negative reviews, these are the middling reviews, and where I kind of come in on them. Oftentimes the positive reviews are just like, everyone's just like, oh, I love it, and they don't give concrete reasons, where negative people have a tendency to really say, I didn't like this character for doing this particular thing, and it's like, oh yeah, me too, or oh, I didn't see that. It's like, sometimes that can be useful. The last section is stand out from the crowd, which is, which books have you read with the lowest ratings on Goodreads that you loved? And number 10 is, which books have you read with the highest rating on Goodreads that you hated? And I don't really have any interesting questions and answers for those, so I guess I do not stand out from the crowd particularly much. So I will leave it there. Thank you, Gemma, for creating this tag. It was fun to do. It's always interesting to think about reviewing. I like talking about. I review every single book that I read. Some of those videos go up here, but I always need to talk. I find, like, whatever reading I enjoy, it's usually books that I just love to think about and talk about afterwards. And so I don't know if that's me reviewing my own mind as much as it is reviewing the book, I guess. But I find it a valuable and strangely addictive process, which is probably why I've hung around on BookTube and inflicted myself on you people, for so long. So yeah, and also just to hear other people's thoughts on books too is just a joy. All right, more videos later.